He didn't hesitate for even a second. He slid the envelope toward me, as if it wasn't an offer, but a decision. "I think this is best for everyone," he said, his voice calm but cold. "Take this and walk out of my daughter's life." For a few seconds, the entire room went completely silent. My wife looked at him in shock. "Dad, what is this?" Her mother said softly, "Don't take this personally. We just think it's time she moves on." Moves on, meaning away from me. I didn't even touch the envelope. I just looked at it, then at their eyes. And honestly, I wasn't angry, because this wasn't the first time I had been looked at this way. But today, something was different. "Hi, my name is Ethan Shaw. I'm 30 years old, and for the past 3 years, I've been married to the same woman, whose father is now trying to pay me to leave her life. My wife always believed I was just an ordinary man, a small tech job, someone who drinks cheap coffee and lives a simple life. And I never corrected her, because I wanted at least one part of my life where I was loved not for my money or power, but for who I am, but for her family. I was never enough. In their eyes, I was just a man who wasn't on their daughter's level. And maybe tonight they had decided to end this problem permanently. I looked at the envelope again. It was still lying on the table, like a silent deal waiting for me. My wife was still confused. She kept looking at me, then at her parents. "Dad, please, what is this?" Her father took a deep breath, and for the first time, looked directly into my eyes. "This is security," he said. "Guys like you." He paused for a moment, as if he didn't even need to choose his words. "Always find their way in." I gave a slight smile. Not anger, just a strange sense of calm, because I knew they had absolutely no idea who they were talking to. I wasn't here to fight. I was here to see how far people can go when they underestimate you. The room fell silent again, and then he said slowly, "Open it." I looked at him, then at my wife, and without saying a word, I picked up the envelope. But before opening it, only one question was in my mind. If they knew the truth, would they still place this envelope in front of me? I slowly turned the envelope in my hand, but still didn't open it. Everyone in the room was watching me, as if they were waiting to see what I would do. My wife spoke again. "Ethan, please, just tell me what's going on." I looked at her. There was confusion in her eyes, but also fear. She couldn't understand what was happening so suddenly, and honestly, I didn't want her to find out this way. But tonight was no longer in my control. Her father leaned slightly forward in his chair. "Open it. You'll understand." There was that confidence in his voice, the kind only a person has, who believes the entire game is in his hands. I nodded slightly, and finally opened the envelope. Inside was a check. I took it out and looked at it for a second. The amount was clearly written, $500,000. No one in the room said anything, as if the amount itself had already said everything. My wife asked softly, "Is that what I think it is?" Her father replied without even looking at me, "It's a fresh start." Fresh start, meaning a life without me. I looked at the check again, then at him, and then I put it back in the envelope. Without saying anything, I slowly slid it back toward him. There was a shift in the room, as if no one expected that. Her father's eyebrows tightened slightly. "Take it," he said, a little firmer this time. "This is more than enough for someone like you." Someone like you. There it was again. I looked into his eyes, and for the first time, I leaned slightly forward and said, "Do you really think I'm here for money?" He stayed silent for a few seconds, then gave a faint smile. "People don't come from nothing and end up here without a reason." My wife immediately stepped in. "Dad, stop. This is getting out of hand." But it was too late, because what he was saying wasn't just about me. It showed what he truly thought of me. Her mother said softly, "We're just trying to help everyone here." "Help?" I nodded slightly. "Help?" I repeated quietly, then leaned back in my chair and took a long breath. Until now, I had only been listening, observing, but now it was clear to me where this was going. This wasn't a conversation. It was a decision, and they were just including me in it, as if I didn't have a choice. I looked at my wife again. She was still silent, but this time, there was something more than confusion in her eyes. Maybe realization. The room fell silent again, and then her father said slowly, "Let's not make this complicated." He leaned toward me, and for the first time, there was softness in his voice. "Take the money and walk away." I looked straight into his eyes, and in that moment, one thing became completely clear. They truly believed that power belonged only to them. I looked at the envelope again, then lightly tapped the table with my fingers. No sound, just a small signal that I was still in control. "Ethan," my wife's voice came again, softer this time. "Say something." I looked at her. There wasn't just confusion in her eyes anymore. There was fear too. She felt something was very wrong, but she still didn't know the full truth. And maybe that's why I had stayed silent until now. I didn't want her to find out like this. But now, this situation had reached a point where silence itself was the answer. Her father suddenly tapped the table lightly, as if his patience was running out. "Let's not waste time," he said. "Take the check, and we'll make this easy for everyone." Easy for them, not for me. I lowered my head slightly, as if thinking. Then I sat straight again, and for the first time, I gave them my full attention. "You think this is easy?" I asked calmly. He paused for a moment, then said, "It doesn't have to be difficult unless you make it." I let out a faint laugh. Not loud, just enough for everyone to hear. A strange energy filled the room, as if no one understood why I wasn't reacting. Her mother said softly, "We're offering you more than enough to move on." More than enough. I nodded. Enough for what? I asked. No answer came, just silence. And that silence said everything. My wife looked at me. "Ethan, please." But this time, I didn't look at her. My eyes stayed on her father, because now the conversation was clear. This was between me and him, and he thought he was winning. I slowly picked up the envelope and placed it in front of me. Then I opened it completely, took the check out again. This time, I lifted it slightly, as if measuring its value. $500,000. I looked at it for a few seconds, then smiled faintly, and the next thing I did was something they never expected. I folded the check and placed it back inside the envelope. Then I slid it back toward him, completely calm, completely controlled. "Keep it," I said. There was an immediate shift in the room. Her father's face hardened. "Don't be stupid," he said. "You won't get a better deal than this." I let him finish, then leaned slightly forward and said quietly, "When did I ever ask you for a deal?" He stayed silent for a few seconds. For the first time, there was a hint of doubt in his eyes, but he hid it quickly. "You don't understand," he said. "This is how the real world works." I nodded. "No," I said softly. "You don't understand." Silence filled the room again, and this time, it was different. This was the kind of silence where something is about to change. I leaned forward slightly in my chair and said, "Do you really think you can buy me?" He answered immediately, "Everyone has a price." I looked into his eyes, and for the first time, my smile deepened slightly, because now I was completely sure. They had no idea what level of game they were sitting in. I didn't say anything for a few seconds, just looked at them. Her father, still sitting in that same confident posture, but in his eyes, there was a slight restlessness now, and that was the moment I had been waiting for. I slowly put my hand into my pocket. No rush, no drama, just controlled movement. My wife immediately looked at me. "Ethan, what are you doing?" I glanced at her for a second, then back at him, and then I took out the one small thing that was about to change everything. A card. It looked simple, but the moment his eyes fell on the logo, his face changed. First confusion, then recognition, and then Silence. I placed the card slowly on the table, right in front of him. His eyes stayed fixed on it. He didn't pick it up, just stared, as if hoping he was seeing it wrong. This, he said slowly, this is a joke. I didn't say anything. I just let him look. A few seconds passed, and the color drained slightly from his face. His wife asked quickly, "What happened?" He didn't respond. He slowly pulled the card closer, and this time picked it up. His fingers were no longer steady. My wife leaned forward too. "Wait, this is..." She stopped. Her voice caught, because now she was starting to understand. For the first time, I spoke slowly. "I never told you." My eyes were now on my wife, because I wanted you to see me, the way you always have. She couldn't say anything. Her eyes kept moving, between the card and me. I looked back at her father. He wasn't looking at me anymore. He was staring at the card, as if it held the answer. "You asked," I said calmly, "why I'm here." I leaned slightly forward. "Now I'll tell you." No one in the room moved. Everyone was just listening. "I'm behind the system." I paused slightly. "The same system your entire work runs on." He slowly raised his head. Our eyes met, and this time, there was no confidence in his eyes, only shock. He tried to speak. "Are you saying that?" "Yes," I cut in. No raised voice, no attitude, just truth. "The place where you work." I gestured lightly toward the card. "I'm behind it." It felt like the air in the room stopped. My wife whispered, "Ethan, what are you saying?" I looked at her. For the first time, there was no question in her eyes, only disbelief. "I'm not lying," I said softly. Her father was completely silent now. His fingers rested on the table, but they weren't moving, because now he understood. The man sitting in front of him, the one he was trying to buy, was actually the one under whom his entire control existed. And in that moment, everything changed. The air in the room was no longer the same. No one was speaking anymore. My wife was looking at me, as if she was seeing me for the first time. And her father, he was still holding that card. But this time, there was no confidence in his grip, only silence. For a few seconds, no one said anything. Then finally, he spoke slowly. "Is this true?" His voice wasn't the same anymore. The authority it had just minutes ago was gone. I simply nodded once. "Yes." That's it. No explanation, no justification. Because now, they didn't need proof. They already understood. My wife slowly leaned back in her chair and said, "Ethan, you knew all this, and you never told me." I looked at her. This time, this was the hardest part. "I would have told you," I said calmly, "but not like this." She looked at me for a few seconds, then said softly, "So you were hiding all of this?" I shook my head. I wasn't hiding anything. I leaned slightly forward. "I just wanted to see how you see me, without all of this." Silence filled the room again, but this time, it wasn't uncomfortable. It was a silence of realization. Her father slowly placed a card on the table. Now he was looking at me, directly, for the first time, without judgment. "So all of this," he said quietly, "you planned it?" I shook my head slightly. "No." I paused. "I just came here to see how much you underestimate me." He had no answer, because whatever he could have said no longer mattered. My wife slowly stood up. She looked once at her parents, then at me. "Let's go," she said softly. I nodded without saying anything, and stood up. We both walked toward the exit. No one stopped us, because now there was nothing left to stop. Outside the restaurant, the air felt a little cold. For a few seconds, we both stayed silent. Then she said softly, "I don't know what I'm feeling." I looked at her. "Then start with the truth," I said. She kept looking at me. "Why didn't you tell me all this before?" I took a light breath. "Because I wanted you to know me not by my name or my money, but by who I am." She stayed silent for a few seconds, then asked softly, "And now?" I smiled slightly. Now you know both. She lowered her head and gave a faint smile. The city lights were glowing in the distance, and for the first time, I felt like I didn't have to prove anything anymore. I didn't look back, because what needed to happen had already happened. Some people mistake silence for weakness, but the truth is, silence often comes when a person knows that the real control is in their hands. If you've ever felt that people underestimated you, make sure to like this video and tell me in the comments, when was the moment you proved someone wrong? And if you enjoy real stories like this, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next one.